For my friend Nathan, who wrote me with a question, but I figured other people might have a question, and out of the billions of answers on the internet and elsewhere about what you might do with shoulder problem or shoulder dysfunction, I had shown Nathan a stretch about setting the femur in the head of the femur deeper in the hip, and it worked like a charm. And he said, do you have anything like that for the shoulder? Because I'm starting to do some strengthening. And from what I got, saying when I move, my shoulders feel crunchy, and like it feels like unstable there. Like the head of the femur is going to be pulled out of the shoulder socket. So yeah, man, a few thoughts, and then we both acknowledge like it's just funny answering. Funny answering these things over the internet, especially without being able to see. But a few like shoulder specific things. One, I think hanging is incredible, and rather than demo a bunch of stuff here, that we do have bars in my old office and new office. Ido Portal, Google Ido, IDO Portal, like portal, hanging. Google that, and there may be others, but has a whole library. Really simple. I would strongly suggest stay with the simple until you're like, until the next thing is just so obvious. But like passive hanging, it's just hanging from a bar, but it's not passive, obviously, because you're hanging, you're using your grip. And then there'll be different like shoulder movements, but taking that slow and like doing a really nice job with it over the months, and doing a little bit each day could be incredible. So two more things. One is similar to hanging is compressing, and I'm gonna God, if you fit, one sec. So this is good enough. The whole sleeve of musculature and fascia around the shoulder joint, and nerves and blood and all of that. The rotator cuff is a full ring. Often we're talking about the back of it, but it's really a whole, well, I shouldn't say a full ring, but it's a cuff kind of snugging the arm bone in, and the labrum there's a lot of like, ring around this joint to give it some stability. It's a very shitty anatomy lesson, but it serves the purpose. So hanging, similarly, like if I'm hanging, there's a kind of equal distraction, and then any kind of movement, there's an equal engagement. Not distraction like you get distracted, but distraction like two things pulling apart from each other. So in pressing, similarly, I notice, and I'm sure I'm not the only one to notice this, we tend to sort of fold towards weak places in the shoulder, and that same folding is happening in any movement, like lifting up overhead, and I won't say any movement, but I'd say any movement with effort, like the joint will tend to sort of slide towards its most, in some ways, most compromised position. So again, really simple. I hope this is all making sense. This archetype can show up anywhere, but I'll say, like, if I'm doing this shows up, like a side plank or something, I'll see if I can exaggerate this with a t-shirt on. Let's say I kind of get this weakness here, and I'm like this. I mean, it's pretty exaggerated, right? So if I was doing like a side plank, like, yeah, I can sort of hold it, but right now my arm is sort of like a stump. The energy goes zzz, and then it's sort of, and I'm needing to like, kind of brace my core and do all this other stuff to stay on top of this. I'm going to put my knee down to really get a good feel for what it's like to, when I am now over this, and I'm sort of pushing up in a way where the vitality goes not just into my chest, but kind of that whole ring of the shoulder lights up and is sort of bringing some levity. It's a weird thing it's a terrible thing to like explain if you've never experienced it. If you experienced it, you might be like, oh yeah, that thing. The same idea, if you know that like transversus abdominis, the abdominal muscles, they can sort of co-contract this full ring to give a little lift. I mean, really at any probably anywhere, but certainly any joint in the body, you can sort of do this to some extent. But anyway, back to the shoulder. So having that sort of pressing, and I'm showing it here on side plank, but it's the same thing in like this kind of plank. In fact, being able to move between these two, it shows up in so many places, like different locomotive patterns, like GMB, the letters GMB fitness. They have, as does Ido Portal, a lot of cool like locomotion type stuff, and so that done well will do the same sort of thing. So like if you're in a squat practicing, so look up GMB fitness, what they're doing. So it's practicing like loading, they call this the frog, setting down. And there's obviously all sorts of things involved, but one of them is the pressing, and then there's this sort of question, like if I pushed through and it's sort of this light went up, it wouldn't ideally bleed out. There's kind of a like going up into my body. I imagine this is, I can't say much about handstands because I'm shitty at handstands, but I imagine it's that same kind of thing at any angle, whether the angle is here or overhead. I'm not very mobile and going overhead. So, but pressing here, and this sort of like, so that could be a thing, it's in yoga, whatever, side plank, basically anywhere your hand is on the ground. Turkish get-ups, laying back and pressing up into that whole sort of category of movements, which are in many different lineages, I think, of pushing the ground, compressing through the shoulder joint. So distracting through hanging and mobilizing and really strengthening around your shoulder joint, among many other things. And then that kind of same idea, but replace distraction with compression. And then number 3, as much as like the body is connected, in all sorts of ways, particularly, I think the shoulders are, I'm trying to think of the word, vulnerable maybe, to freeing up your breathing can really help free up your shoulders in a good way. I think a lot of times we sort of pull and compensate. There's sort of a beautiful like emotional quality to that too. Like sometimes if something is sort of lacking, I don't say that with any judgment, seriously, or any like oh, you're lacking, like fuck, we're all lacking, that kind of thing. Just like, but it's one thing to then work with it from a core level. I will get to the exercise, but this is sort of the emotional quality. We can sort of override that by using the bigger muscles of the arms. So little shifts in like alignment can be really different in our experiences. You may well have had this experience. So again, there's a billion ways to like open up or soften or, work with breathing. One of my favorites as sort of a intro, this heater is starting. So here I am against a wall. I don't know if I can show this whole thing right, but there's actually a heater. Here's the wall. Something akin to like a series of 90 degrees. You don't get out your whatever thing that measures angles and like, but roughly. The feet are on the wall, and that just keeps like a very light hum of engagement. This also slacks the tissues of the lower belly and, the psoas and the a whole bunch of nerves and lymphatic tissue, which in general tends to produce effect of softening the upper chest. So, God, you could hang out here for like 5 years and probably like study this position, or arms out at your sides. But this is a great one to breathe and feel some vitality, because again, my knees are bent, my feet are on the wall. I can even kind of bear down on the exhale, like sort of, in PT, sometimes I'll pretend like you're blowing a balloon. This would be that sort of like pressing the abdominals down. There's a kind of engagement. You can also do it much, much softer, depending on who you are. I'd say erring on the side of something you can actually feel, something that you are positive is real in your body. That's just a way to work with the breath, feeling your back body kind of soften and spread out. And you might do a before and after of like an overhead shoulder test, or move your arms in standing And then do this for 5 minutes. And just know, last little point about this, sometimes we can get to these positions and it's like, okay, I'm gonna like, I'm exaggerating obviously, but there's this sort of furrow-browedness that is in standing and then it comes into lying down. So, whatever it takes to like not go, well, right, that's why your feet are on the wall. There's a kind of dignity to it. But whatever it takes to really just give it some time, like wet sand settling or like a snow in a snow globe. Just like, it just takes a sec. And then I know this is, broad. There's so many things you could do with the breathing, but even just like give it a sec. Give it a sec for 5 minutes and then do your overhead test again. The awareness of that, as well as the hanging from Ito's work. Do that for, try it, 5 minutes a day, 7 minutes a day for a month. That's the hanging challenge. Let me know how it goes.